Welcome to my channel, Booktube Fluent. Have you ever worked hard, tried again and again, but still felt like nothing is changing in your life? What if I told you the problem is not your effort, but something you never noticed? Stay with me, because this story might change the way you see your life forever. And tell me in the comments, do you feel stuck right now or not?
Chapter 1: The Man Who Never Won. There was a man who tried every day, but no matter what he did, he never felt like he was winning in life. He woke up early in the morning, looked at his phone, and saw people doing better than him. Some people were speaking English confidently. Some were getting good jobs. Some were growing, moving forward, smiling, living a life he wanted. He sat quietly and said to himself in a very soft voice, "Why not me?" He was not lazy. He was not careless. In fact, he worked very hard. He watched videos. He read books. He listened carefully. He tried to understand every word. But something inside him always felt heavy, like he was running but not moving. Every day felt the same. He started something, stopped it, started again, and again stopped. And slowly, without even noticing, his confidence began to disappear. When he tried to speak English, his mind became full of fear. Words were inside him, but they did not come out. He knew simple sentences, but when the moment came to speak, everything became blank. His heart beat fast. His hands felt cold, and his mind said, "You are not ready." So he stayed silent. Again, and again, and again. Later, when he was alone, he spoke perfectly in his mind. He made full sentences, clear sentences, beautiful sentences. But in front of people, he said nothing. This made him feel worse. He started thinking that maybe he was not smart enough. Maybe English was not for him. Maybe success was only for other people. But the truth was very different. Every evening, he promised himself, "Tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow I will speak. Tomorrow I will improve." And every morning, the same story started again. He tried hard, but something invisible was stopping him. Something he could not see. Something he could not understand. And this is where many people make a mistake. They think effort is enough. They think trying again and again will automatically bring success. But sometimes you can try for years and still stay in the same place. One day, something small happened. It looked very normal, something anyone could ignore. He was sitting in a small park, watching people walking, talking, laughing. Two friends were sitting near him, speaking simple English. Not perfect English, not fast English, just simple English. One of them made mistakes. The other corrected him, and they both laughed. There was no fear, no pressure, no silence, just speaking freely. The man watched them carefully. Something inside him moved. He felt a strange feeling, not jealousy, not sadness, something deeper. It was like a question waking up inside him. He asked himself, "Why can they speak, and I cannot?" He knew more words than them. He understood more grammar than them. But still they were speaking, and he was silent. That moment stayed in his mind. When he went home that night, he could not forget what he saw. He sat on his bed and started thinking deeply. What is wrong with me? I am trying every day. I am learning every day. Then why am I not improving? His thoughts became heavy. His mind became loud. Questions started coming again and again. Am I doing something wrong? Am I missing something? Or am I just not good enough? This is the moment where most people give up. This is the moment where people say, it's too hard, and they stop trying. But he did not stop. Even with all the doubt, even with all the confusion, he still had one small fire inside him, a very small hope. And that hope said, there must be something I don't understand yet. Days passed, but that one moment in the park stayed alive in his mind. It followed him everywhere. When he studied, when he listened, when he tried to speak, he remembered those two people laughing and speaking freely and slowly. Something started to change inside him. Not outside. Outside, everything was still the same. He was still quiet.
Still struggling, still feeling stuck. But inside, a question was growing stronger. And sometimes, one powerful question can change everything. He did not know it yet, but that small moment in the park was the beginning of a big change in his life. Not a loud change, not a fast change, but a deep change. A change that starts silently and grows slowly. Because the truth is, his problem was not his effort. His problem was something much deeper. Something he was doing every single day without even knowing it. And that hidden mistake was about to be revealed. Chapter 2. The small mistake no one sees. The next morning, the man woke up with the same heavy feeling in his chest, but something was different. That small moment in the park did not leave him. It stayed in his mind like a quiet voice that kept asking him one simple question again and again. What if the problem is not your effort? He sat on his bed, looked at his books, his notes, his phone full of saved English lessons, and for the first time, instead of feeling proud of how much he had collected, he felt confused. He had so much, but he could do so little. He knew many words, but he could not use them. He understood sentences, but he could not create his own. It was like he had all the pieces of a puzzle, but he did not know how to put them together. He started his usual routine again. He opened a video, listened carefully, paused, repeated, wrote down new words, and underlined important lines. On the outside, everything looked perfect. If someone saw him, they would say, "He is working so hard. He will definitely succeed." But inside, something was missing. When the video ended, he closed his notebook and tried to speak just one simple sentence about his day. And again, silence. His mind became empty. His heart beat faster. The same wall appeared in front of him. He whispered slowly, "I wake. And then he stopped. He knew the sentence. He had seen it many times. But in that moment, it did not come out. This is where the hidden mistake lives. It is not loud. It does not shout. It hides inside daily habits. It looks like learning, but it is not real progress. The man was collecting English, but not living it. He was watching, but not using. He was preparing, but never starting. And this is why he stayed in the same place, day after day, week after week, month after month. He was waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect confidence, the perfect feeling, but that moment never came. Later that day, he went outside again. He walked slowly, thinking deeply. He started noticing people more carefully. He saw a young boy speaking broken English with a shopkeeper. The boy made mistakes. His sentences were not perfect. But he was speaking. He was trying. He was communicating. And something surprising happened. The shopkeeper understood him. They talked. They smiled. The conversation continued. It was not perfect, but it was real. The man stopped walking. He stood there for a few seconds, watching this simple conversation, and something hit him like a quiet shock. He realized that the boy was not waiting to become perfect. He was not afraid of mistakes. He was not hiding. He was just speaking with whatever he had. And that small action gave him something powerful: progress. The man looked at himself and felt a deep pain inside. Not the pain of failure, but the pain of realization. He said slowly in his mind, "I know more than him, but I do less than him." That sentence stayed with him. It was simple, but it was powerful. For the first time, he started to see something clearly. His problem was not lack of knowledge. His problem was lack of action. But even after seeing this, he could not change immediately. That is how strong habits are. He went back home, opened another video, and again started learning. But now, something felt strange. Every word he wrote, every sentence he underlined, a small voice inside him said, "Will you use this or just collect it?" He tried to ignore that voice, but it did not stop. It became louder with every minute. It made him uncomfortable. It made him restless. It made him question everything he was doing. And this is a powerful moment in every person's life. When you start questioning your own system, your own habits, your own way of doing things, that is the beginning of real change. But it is also a very difficult moment, because now you cannot lie to yourself anymore. That night he did something different. He closed his book early. He put his phone away. He sat quietly in his room and tried again to speak. Not a big sentence, not a perfect sentence, just something simple. He took a deep breath and said slowly, "I am sitting in my room." His voice was low. His sentence was not strong, but it was real. It came from him, not from a book, not from a video, from him. He stopped. He listened to his own voice. And in that small moment, something changed. It was not a big success. It was not a perfect sentence. But it was the first time he felt a small connection between learning and doing, between knowing and speaking. And that feeling was new. But he still did not fully understand the hidden lesson. He only saw a small part of it. He still believed he needed more learning, more preparation, more time. He still did not see the full picture. He still did not know that the biggest mistake he was making every day was not about what he was learning. It was about how he was learning. And just when he was starting to feel this confusion more deeply, someone was watching him. Someone who understood exactly what he was doing wrong. Someone who was about to change everything with just a few simple words. Chapter 3: The Stranger Who Saw the Truth. The next day felt quiet, but inside the man, something was moving. His thoughts were not the same anymore. That one simple sentence he spoke the night before, "I am sitting in my room," stayed in his mind like a small light in a dark place. It was not a big achievement, but it felt different. It felt real. Still, he was confused. One moment he felt hope. The next moment he felt lost again. He did not know what to do next. Should he go back to his old way of learning, or should he try something new? This confusion followed him as he stepped outside again, walking slowly, looking around, but thinking deeply inside. He went to the same park again, almost without thinking. Maybe he wanted to see those people again. Maybe he wanted to understand something he still could not explain. He sat on the same bench, quiet, watching the world move. People were talking, laughing, living, and he was still trying to find his way. After some time, he noticed someone sitting not far from him, an older man. Calm face, simple clothes, nothing special about him, but something about his presence felt different. He was not looking at his phone. He was not busy. He was just sitting, observing. The man tried to ignore him at first, but after a few minutes, he felt something strange. It was like the older man was looking at him, not in a judging way, not in a strange way, but in a knowing way. Finally, their eyes met. The older man smiled softly and said in a very simple and slow voice, "You look like someone who is trying very hard, but not moving forward." The man was surprised. No one had ever said something like this to him. For a moment, he did not know what to say. Then he gave a small, tired smile and replied, "Yes, that is exactly how I feel." The older man nodded, as if he already knew the answer. There was no rush in his voice, no pressure in his words. He simply said, "Tell me, what are you trying to do?" The man took a deep breath and started explaining everything. He talked about his effort, his learning, his struggle to speak, his fear, his frustration. He spoke slowly, sometimes stopping, sometimes searching for words, but this time he did not stay silent. He tried. And the older man listened, not like someone waiting to reply, but like someone truly understanding. When the man finished, there was a short silence. The older man looked at him gently and said something that sounded simple, but carried deep meaning. He said, "You are not failing, you are just doing it in the wrong way." The man froze for a second. Those words felt strong. They did not hurt, but they shook something inside him. "Wrong way?" he asked quietly. "But I am trying every day. I am learning, I am practicing." "What is wrong?" The older man leaned back slightly and smiled. "Trying is good," he said, "but trying without the right direction can keep you stuck for a long time." The man looked confused. He had never thought about direction before. For him, effort was everything. Work hard, repeat, learn more. That was his system. But now, for the first time, he felt like that system might not be enough. The older man continued, speaking slowly, using very simple words. "Let me ask you something," he said. "If you walk very fast, but in the wrong direction, will you reach your destination?" The man thought for a moment and then shook his head. "No," he said softly. "Exactly," the older man replied. "You are walking fast, very fast, but maybe not in the right direction." These words stayed in the air. The man felt something new, not fear, not doubt, something deeper. Awareness. It was like he was seeing himself from outside for the first time. All those hours of learning, All those videos, all those notes, suddenly they did not feel as powerful as before. He was not wrong to try, but maybe he was missing something important. He looked at the older man and asked, "So, what should I do?" There was hope in his voice now. Real hope. The kind of hope that comes when you believe change is possible. But the older man did not give a long answer. He did not explain everything. Instead, he said something very unexpected. He said, "I will not give you the answer now." The man was surprised again. "Why?" he asked. "Because," the older man said gently, "you don't need more information. You need experience. If I tell you everything now, you will understand it in your mind, but not feel it in your life." The man listened carefully. This felt different from anything he had heard before. Then the older man gave him a small task. Very small. So small that it almost felt unimportant. He said, "For the next few days, don't try to learn more. Don't watch new lessons. Don't collect new words. Just do one thing. Speak simple sentences every day about your life, about what you see, about what you feel. Not perfect sentences, just real sentences." The man looked confused again. "That's all?" he asked. "Yes," the older man smiled. "That's all. But do it honestly. Do it daily. And don't worry about mistakes." The task felt too simple. The man had expected something big, something powerful, something advanced. But this felt almost too easy to matter. And yet, something inside him said, "Try it." Before leaving, the older man looked at him one more time and said, "Sometimes the biggest lesson hides inside the simplest action." Then he stood up and walked away. The man sat there, holding those words in his mind. He did not fully understand them. He still had questions, many questions. But for the first time in a long time, he also had direction. A small task, a simple action, and maybe the beginning of something real. But he did not know yet that this simple task would start changing everything. Chapter 4: The Simple Task That Felt Strange. The next morning, the man woke up with a different kind of feeling inside him. It was not full confidence, and it was not full fear either. It was something in between, something new. He sat on his bed and remembered the words of the older man. "Don't learn more, just speak." It sounded so simple, almost too simple. His mind quickly started fighting back. "This is not enough. You need more words, more grammar, more practice." But another quiet voice inside him said, "Just try." For the first time, instead of listening to the loud voice of doubt, he decided to follow the small voice of action. He looked around his room slowly, as if seeing it for the first time. Everything was normal. The chair, the table, the window. But now, these things were not just objects. They were opportunities. He took a deep breath and said very slowly, "This is my room." His voice felt weak. His sentence felt too simple. His mind immediately judged him. "This is useless. You already know this." But he did not stop. He continued, "I am sitting on my bed. I see a table. The table is brown." Each sentence felt strange, like he was doing something wrong. Not because it was difficult, but because it was different from his old way. This is the moment where many people quit, not when something is hard, but when something feels unfamiliar. The man felt uncomfortable. His brain was not used to this kind of learning. Before, he always listened, wrote, repeated after someone. But now, he was creating his own sentences. Simple sentences, yes, but they were his. And that made a big difference. Still, his mind kept resisting. This is too basic. This will not help you. You need something better. But he remembered the older man's words again, and he continued. After a few minutes, he stopped, not because he was tired, but because he felt strange. He sat quietly and thought, is this really going to help me? There was no big result, no strong improvement, no sudden confidence. Just small, slow, simple sentences. It did not feel like progress, but something inside him said, this is different. Later that day, he went outside again. This time, he did not just walk silently. He tried to describe what he saw. Very quietly, almost like talking to himself, he said, I see a man. He is walking. He is talking on the phone. At first, he felt shy, even though no one was listening to him. He felt like people might judge him, even if they could not hear him. This is how deep fear can be. It does not need people. It lives inside you. But he kept going, step by step, sentence by sentence. He did not try to be perfect. He did not try to be fast. He just tried to be real. And something interesting started to happen. Very slowly, his mind became less heavy. The pressure of speaking perfectly started to disappear. He was not trying to impress anyone. He was not trying to sound smart. He was just trying to express simple thoughts. And in that simplicity, there was freedom. But still, doubt did not leave him completely. At night, when he sat alone, the old thoughts came back. You are not improving. This is too slow. This is not enough. He felt that familiar frustration again. The same feeling that used to stop him before. The feeling that says, quit now. It's not working. And this was the real test. Because change does not come in big moments. It comes in small moments where you choose to continue, even when you don't see results. The man closed his eyes for a moment and remembered the park, the people speaking freely, the boy talking without fear, the older man's calm voice. All these small memories came together, and he realized something important. He had tried the old way for a long time, and it did not give him what he wanted. Now, he was trying something new. It felt strange, yes, but maybe that was the point. He opened his eyes and said one more sentence, slowly, clearly, I will try again tomorrow. That sentence was simple, but it was powerful. The next day he continued, and the next day, and the next day. There was no big change, no sudden success, but there was one small difference. He did not stop. And sometimes, not stopping is the biggest progress. After a few days, something very small but important happened. While speaking, he did not think too much. For a moment, his sentence came out naturally. Just one sentence. But it was faster. It was smoother. It was easier. He paused and felt surprised. Did I just say that without thinking? He asked himself. That moment lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to change something inside him. He started to feel a small connection between his mind and his voice. Before, there was always a gap. He knew something in his mind, but he could not say it. Now, that gap was becoming smaller, slowly, very slowly, but it was happening. He still did not fully understand the lesson. He still thought maybe he needed more time, more effort, more practice. But deep inside, something was growing. Not confidence, not yet. Something more important. Trust. Trust in the process. Trust in the small steps. Trust that maybe, just maybe, this simple task was not so simple after all. And without realizing it, he was getting closer to the truth, a truth that would change not just how he learned, but how he lived. Because sometimes, The strangest actions bring the biggest transformation. Chapter 5. The moment. Everything slows down. His days passed and something quiet began to change inside the man, but it did not come like a loud success or a big victory. It came slowly, almost invisibly, like the sun rising before you even noticed the light. At first, he did not see any difference. He still woke up, still felt unsure, still spoke simple sentences that felt too small to matter. But he continued. Every morning, he looked around and described his world. Every afternoon, he spoke softly while walking. Every night, he said a few sentences before sleeping. No pressure, no perfection, no long speeches, just simple, real words. And then one day, something unusual happened. Not outside, but inside him. It was a normal morning. Nothing special. He was sitting with a cup of tea, looking outside the window, when he suddenly said, without planning, without thinking too much, "It is a quiet morning. I feel calm today." He stopped. His eyes became still. He realized what just happened. That sentence came naturally. It was not forced. It was not broken. It was not stuck in his throat. It simply came out. And in that moment, everything felt slower. His mind was not running fast. His thoughts were not fighting him. For a few seconds, there was peace between his mind and his voice. He leaned back and took a deep breath. Something inside him whispered, "This is new." Before, speaking felt like climbing a mountain. Now, for a small moment, it felt like walking on a simple path. He did not celebrate loudly. He did not jump with excitement. But deep inside, he felt something very important. Relief. The kind of relief you feel when something heavy finally becomes light. He understood that progress was not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is just one small sentence that feels easier than before. But even in this moment, his mind tried to pull him back. It's just one sentence. "It doesn't mean anything," the old voice said. "You still can't speak fluently. You are still far behind." That voice was familiar. It had been with him for a long time. It always tried to make small progress feel useless. But this time, something was different. The man did not fully believe that voice anymore. He looked at his small progress and said quietly, "It is not big, but it is real." That was the moment everything started to slow down. He stopped rushing for big results. He stopped chasing fast improvement. He stopped comparing himself with others every minute. Instead, he began to notice small wins. A clearer sentence, a faster thought, a moment of confidence. These small things became important to him, and when small things become important, big change begins. He started enjoying the process, not fully, not always, but more than before. When he spoke, he did not feel like he was doing a test. He felt like he was expressing himself. When he made mistakes, he did not stop immediately. He continued. That was new. Before, one mistake was enough to make him silent. Now, one mistake was just a small part of the journey. One evening, he went back to the park again, the same place where everything started. He sat on the bench and looked around. This time, he did not just watch people. He described them in his mind and sometimes softly with his voice. A woman is walking. She is smiling. 2 children are playing. His sentences were still simple, but they were smoother. His fear was still there, but it was smaller. And for the first time, he did not feel like an outsider. He felt like someone who was slowly becoming part of the world. Then something beautiful happened. A man sitting near him dropped his bag. Without thinking too much, he looked at him and said, "Your bag. It fell." The sentence was simple, not perfect, but clear. The man smiled, picked up his bag, and said, "Oh, thank you." That was it. A small moment, a very small conversation. But for him, it felt big because that was real speaking. Not in his mind, not alone in his room, but in the real world. He sat there for a few seconds, feeling that moment again and again in his mind. I spoke, and he understood me, he thought. His heart felt warm, not because he was perfect, but because he was real. And in that moment, he understood something very important, even if he could not fully explain it yet. Speaking is not about perfect words. It is about connection. From that day, his mindset started to change more deeply. He was no longer asking, "Am I perfect?" He started asking, "Am I expressing?" This one small shift changed everything. It removed pressure. It created space. It allowed him to grow, and slowly, something else began to appear. Not loud confidence, not fake confidence, but quiet confidence. The kind that grows from real experience. The kind that comes from doing, not just thinking. Days passed, and this feeling became stronger. He still had bad moments. He still got stuck sometimes. He still forgot words. But now, those moments did not stop him completely. They slowed him down, but they did not end his journey. And this is where most people fail. They think progress must be fast to be real. They think improvement must be big to matter. But the truth is, real change is slow, quiet, and sometimes almost invisible. The man was finally starting to understand this, not through explanation, not through theory, but through experience. He was living the lesson, step by step, but one big question was still inside him. What exactly is happening to me? He felt the change. He saw the difference. But he did not fully understand the reason, and he knew there was more to learn. So, he made a decision. He would go back to the older man, because now he was ready to hear the truth, the full truth, the hidden lesson that had been shaping his journey from the beginning. Chapter 6: The Hidden Lesson Revealed. The next day, the man did not wait. He went back to the park earlier than usual, as if something inside him was calling him there. His steps were not fast, but they were certain. He was not the same person who had first come here with confusion and quiet pain. Something had shifted inside him. Not everything, but enough to make him curious, enough to make him ready. He looked around, searching, hoping to see the older man again. For a few minutes, he saw nothing. Then, near the same place, sitting calmly as always, the older man appeared. It felt almost like he had been there the whole time, just waiting. The man walked toward him with a mix of respect and excitement. He sat down and, without waiting too long, began to speak. His words were still simple, but now they flowed more easily. He said, "I did what you told me. I spoke every day." Small sentences. And something changed. Not big, but real. "I feel different, but I don't understand why." The older man listened carefully, his face calm, his eyes soft. Then he smiled, not in surprise, but in quiet agreement. "Yes," he said gently, "because now you are starting to learn in the right way." The man leaned forward slightly, His heart was ready. His mind was open. He wanted to understand everything. "What is the right way?" he asked. The older man paused for a moment, then spoke slowly, using very simple words, as if he was not just explaining, but guiding. "The hidden lesson," he said, "is this. You don't learn by collecting more. You learn by using what you already have." The words were simple, but they went deep. The man felt them inside him. He repeated them quietly in his mind, using "not collect." Suddenly, many of his past days started to make sense. All those hours of watching, writing, saving, but not speaking, all that effort, without real action. The older man continued, "Before, you were trying to be perfect before starting. You were waiting to feel ready. But the truth is, you become ready by starting." The man's eyes became still. He remembered all those moments when he stayed silent, because he felt unprepared. He thought he needed more knowledge, more time, more confidence. But now, he saw it clearly. That waiting had been stopping him. "You see," the older man said, "your problem was not lack of ability. Your problem was fear of imperfection. You were afraid to speak wrong, so you did not speak at all. But when you started speaking simple sentences, you broke that fear." The man nodded slowly. Yes, that was true. When he spoke small, simple sentences, the pressure became less. The fear became smaller. He did not feel like he was being judged. He just felt like he was trying. The older man looked at him and asked, "Tell me, when you spoke those simple sentences, did you feel more free or more afraid?" The man answered without thinking, "More free." The older man smiled again. "That is the point. Learning should give you freedom, not fear." The words stayed in the air like something important. Then the older man added something even deeper. "There is another part of the lesson," he said. "You were not just collecting words. You were also thinking in the wrong way. You were trying to translate everything in your mind. You were not thinking in English. You were converting from another language." The man's eyes opened wider. This was true. Every time he tried to speak, he first thought in his own language, then tried to change it into English. That took time. That created confusion. That built pressure. When you started speaking simple sentences, the older man continued, you stopped translating. You started thinking directly, even if it was very basic. That is why it felt easier. Now the man understood something very powerful. Speaking is not about big words. It is about clear thinking. And clear thinking starts with simple sentences. He sat there quietly, feeling everything come together. All his confusion, all his struggle, all his small progress. It now had meaning. It was not random. It was not luck. It was a process. The older man leaned slightly forward and said one final thing, slowly and clearly. Consistency is stronger than intensity. You don't need to do a lot one day and nothing the next day. You need to do a little every day. This sentence hit him deeply. He remembered how he used to study for hours one day, then stop for days. He thought that was effort. But now, he saw the truth. Small daily action was more powerful. The man took a deep breath. His heart felt light, not because everything was solved, but because now he understood the direction. He was not lost anymore. He had a path. He looked at the older man and said softly, "So, the lesson is not about learning more. It is about using what I know, every day, without fear?" The older man nodded. Yes, that is the hidden lesson. Silence followed. But it was not an empty silence. It was a full silence, a silence where understanding lives. The man looked around the park again, but this time, everything felt different. The same trees, the same people, the same sounds. But he was not the same. He felt present. He felt capable. He felt ready. Not perfectly ready, but truly ready. And sometimes, that is all you need. He stood up slowly, thanked the older man, and began to walk away. His steps were still simple, just like his sentences. But now, they had direction. Because now, he knew the truth. The hidden lesson was never hidden from the world. It was only hidden from him, until he was ready to see it. Chapter 7. The New Way of Living. The man walked home from the park with a feeling he had never experienced before. It was not excitement like a sudden success, and it was not relief like a problem disappearing. It was something deeper, something stable. It felt like his mind had finally found a clear direction. For so long he had been moving without understanding where he was going. Now, even though his steps were still small, they felt meaningful. He reached his room, looked around slowly, and for the first time, he did not see a place where he struggled. He saw a place where he could grow. That evening, he did not open any new lessons. He did not search for difficult words. He did not try to impress himself with big sentences. Instead, he sat quietly and began to speak about his day, just like he had been practicing. Today, I went to the park. I talked to a man. I learned something important. His voice was calm. His sentences were simple. But something had changed. He was not fighting with his thoughts anymore. He was working with them. There was no pressure to be perfect. There was only a quiet focus on being real. Days started to pass, and his routine slowly transformed. Not into something big or complex, but into something consistent. Every morning, he spoke a few sentences about how he felt. Every afternoon, he described what he saw around him. Every night, he reflected on his day. These small actions became part of his life. Not a task, not a burden, but a habit. And habits, when done daily, begin to shape a new identity. He was no longer the man who only learned. He was becoming the man who used what he learned. At first, no one noticed. The world did not suddenly change for him. People did not clap for him. There was no big moment where everything became perfect. But slowly, small signs started to appear. When he heard English, he understood faster. When he thought, his ideas came more clearly. When he spoke, his sentences came more naturally. It was not magic, it was repetition. Simple repetition with awareness. One day, something interesting happened at a small shop. The man went to buy something, and the shopkeeper spoke in simple English. Before, the man would have avoided the situation. He would have nodded silently or answered with just one word. But this time, without planning too much, he replied, "Yes, I need this. How much is it?" His voice was not strong, but it was clear. The shopkeeper understood him easily and responded. They had a short conversation. Nothing long, nothing perfect, but real. After leaving the shop, the man stopped for a moment. He smiled, not because he spoke perfectly, but because he spoke without fear. This was new. Before, speaking felt like a test. Now it felt like a tool, a simple tool to connect, to express, to live, and that shift changed everything. As days turned into weeks, the man's confidence grew slowly. Not loud confidence that shows off, but quiet confidence that stays inside and supports you. He began to trust himself more. He no longer waited for the right time to speak. He created the moment, even if it was small, even if it was not perfect. People around him started noticing something. Not his English level, but his energy. He looked more relaxed, more open, more present. He smiled more. He spoke more. Even in simple words, there was life in his voice. And when people feel that life, they respond, they listen, they connect. One of his friends said to him one day, "You look different. What changed?" The man paused for a moment. He did not give a long answer. He simply said, "I stopped waiting and I started speaking." That sentence carried everything he had learned. But the journey was not always smooth. There were still moments when he got stuck. There were still days when his sentences felt slow or broken. There were still times when his mind went blank. But now, those moments did not control him. He did not stop completely. He did not go back to silence. He simply paused and then continued. That is the real difference. Not perfection, persistence. He learned to accept mistakes as part of the process. When he made an error, he did not feel ashamed. He corrected it or moved forward. That simple change removed a heavy weight from his mind. Fear lost its power, and when fear becomes smaller, action becomes easier. He also noticed something deeper. He was not just learning English, he was changing how he lived. He became more aware of his thoughts, more present in his actions, more patient with his progress. The lesson was no longer just about language, it was about life, about how small actions, done daily, can slowly transform who you are. Every day, he became a little better, not because he learned more, but because he used more, and that made all the difference. One evening, he went back to the park again, the same place where his journey began. He sat on the same bench, looked around, and smiled quietly. This place had not changed, but he had. He watched people walking, talking, living, and now he felt like he was part of that world. He spoke softly to himself, "I am here, and I am improving." That sentence was simple, but it was true. And sometimes, truth is the most powerful thing you can say. He did not know where this journey would take him in the future, but he knew one thing clearly now. He was no longer stuck. He was moving, step by step, sentence by sentence, and that was enough. Chapter 8: The Truth Most People Ignore. The man sat quietly that evening, not with confusion like before, but with awareness. His journey had not made him perfect, but it had made him honest with himself. And when a person becomes honest with their own habits, they start seeing things that most people ignore. He looked back at his old self, the one who watched endlessly, wrote endlessly, waited endlessly, and he realized something powerful. His biggest problem was never his level, it was his pattern. The same pattern that thousands of people follow every day without even noticing it. They learn, but they do not use. They understand, but they do not express. They wait, but they never begin. This is the truth most people ignore. It is not a comfortable truth. It does not feel good at first, because it shows you that the problem is not outside, it is inside your daily choices. The man remembered how he used to say, "I will start speaking when I am ready." But now he understood something very simple and very deep. Readiness does not come first. Action comes first. He had been waiting for a feeling that only action could create, and that waiting had kept him stuck for a long time. He began to notice the same pattern in others around him. People who said, I understand English, but I can't speak. People who said, I know many words, but I don't feel confident. People who said, I will start soon. And he wanted to tell them something simple, but something that could change everything. He wanted to say, you are not stuck because you don't know. You are stuck because you don't use what you know. That sentence stayed in his mind. It became clear to him that learning is not just about input, it is about output. Not just about taking in information, but giving it out. When you only take in, your mind becomes heavy. When you give out, your mind becomes free. This is why when he started speaking small sentences every day, he felt lighter. It was not because his English suddenly became advanced, it was because he stopped holding everything inside. He walked outside and saw people again. This time, he did not feel behind them. He felt connected. He realized that communication is not about being perfect, it is about being understood. And most people understand simple language. They do not need big words, they need clear words, real words, honest words. Then another thought came to him, deeper than before. He realized that many people are not afraid of English. They are afraid of judgment. They are afraid of making mistakes in front of others. They are afraid of looking weak. And because of that fear, they choose silence. But that silence slowly becomes a habit, and that habit becomes a wall. He had lived behind that wall. Now he had stepped outside. And once you step outside, even a little, you see how unnecessary that wall really was. He remembered his first simple sentences, how strange they felt, how small they looked. But those small sentences had more power than all the notes he had written before, because those sentences were alive. They were action. They were movement. And movement is what creates progress. The truth became even clearer now. You don't need more time to start. You don't need perfect knowledge to begin. You don't need confidence to speak. You need action. And action creates everything else. He stopped walking for a moment and looked around. People were living their lives without thinking too much. They were speaking, laughing, making mistakes, continuing. No one was perfect. No one was waiting. They were just doing. And that simple act of doing was what moved them forward. He asked himself a question, one that felt very real now. What if I had continued my old way? The answer came quickly. Nothing would change. That thought was strong. It showed him how close he was to staying stuck forever, and how one small shift had changed everything. He also understood something important about time. Time does not change you. What you do with time changes you. Before, he spent time learning passively. Now, he used time actively. And that difference changed his results, slowly but clearly. As he continued walking, he felt a responsibility growing inside him. Not a heavy responsibility, but a meaningful one. He wanted to share this truth, not in a complicated way, not with big explanations, but in a simple way that anyone could understand. Because the truth is simple, but people make it complicated. And when something is complicated, people avoid it. But when something is simple, people can start. He sat down again, looked at the sky, and spoke softly. If someone is still waiting, they need to stop waiting. That sentence felt important. Not just for others, but for himself too, because even now there were areas in his life where he was still waiting, still delaying, still overthinking, And this lesson was not only about English anymore, it was about life. How many dreams stay dreams because people wait too long? How many goals stay goals because people don't take the first small step? He smiled slightly, realizing that the same rule applies everywhere. Start small, stay consistent. Don't wait for perfect, and everything begins to change. The truth most people ignore is not hidden because it is complex. It is hidden because it is too simple, and simple things are easy to ignore. But now he could not ignore it anymore. He had lived it. He had felt it. He had changed because of it. And now there was only one thing left to remind the viewer that this story was never just about him. It was about you. Chapter 9. Your story starts now. The man sat quietly for a long time, not because he had nothing to think about, but because, for the first time, everything felt clear. The confusion that once filled his mind had slowly disappeared, and in its place, there was a simple truth. Not a complicated system, not a secret formula. Just a simple truth that had been there all along, waiting for him to see it. He looked back at his journey, from the days of silence and doubt to the small sentences that once felt strange, to the moment he spoke without fear, and he realized something deeply important. Nothing magical had happened. There was no sudden talent, no special ability, no shortcut. There was only one change. He stopped waiting, and he started doing. He took a deep breath and looked around. But this time, he was not just seeing the world. He was understanding his place in it. He was no longer the person who stood outside, watching others move forward. He had stepped into the flow of action, slowly, imperfectly, but truly. And that is when something powerful came into his heart. A realization that this story was never just about him. It was about you. Yes, you. The one watching, listening, thinking quietly, maybe feeling stuck in the same way he once did. Maybe you understand English, but you cannot speak. Maybe you know many words, but your voice stays silent. Maybe you have tried many times, started many times, stopped many times. And deep inside, you are asking the same question. Why am I not improving? He was that person, and now you have seen his journey, you have seen his mistake, you have seen his change. So now, there is only one question left. What will you do next? Because this is the moment where your story begins. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. The man slowly stood up, but this time, it was not just his body that was rising. It was his mindset, his identity, his belief. He was no longer the person who waited for the perfect time. He had become the person who creates the moment. And this change did not come from big actions. It came from small, consistent steps, simple sentences, daily practice, honest effort. He looked at the path in front of him and smiled quietly. He knew there would still be challenges, He knew there would still be moments of doubt. But now, he also knew something stronger than doubt. He knew how to move forward. And once you know how to move forward, even slowly, you are no longer stuck. He spoke softly, almost like a promise. I will continue no matter how small the step is. That sentence was not loud, but it was powerful. Because it was real. And now, this is your moment. You don't need to change everything today. You don't need to become perfect. You don't need to know everything. You only need to start. One sentence. One moment. One small action. Look around you right now and say something in English. It can be simple. It can be small. It can be imperfect. But let it be real. Because that one sentence is the beginning of your transformation. Remember this clearly. Confidence does not come before action. Confidence comes because of action. Fluency does not come from thinking. It comes from speaking. And success does not come from waiting. It comes from starting. The man's story is now complete, but yours is just beginning. And one day, if you continue, if you stay consistent, if you keep speaking, you will look back at this moment and realize this was the day everything changed. Not because something big happened, but because you made a small decision to begin. So don't close this moment without action. Don't let this feeling disappear. Use it right now. Speak one sentence. Write one sentence. Take one step. Because that is how every journey starts. Small, simple, real. And now, your story starts now. If this story made you feel something, if you saw yourself in this journey, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and write one simple English sentence in the comments right now. Because your journey begins with one step. And that step starts today. Because your journey begins with one step. And that step starts today.